All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. We want to welcome everybody who's shown up today. For anyone who is not familiar, we are the romance chapter for the League of Utah Writers, which is just entering into, well, not entering into, but this is our 90th year. We're
Nice.
celebrating. Yeah, the romance chapter's not been around that long, but the League has been around that long. Um, and so we're here. Romance chapter has been around for just a few years. We're entirely online. So we actually have people not just in Utah, we have them spread out across the states, working on the world. So, but at least for the states now. Very exciting. My name's Kira. I am the co-president. Melissa is my co-parent, and we are really excited tonight to bring Danny Siller and Bill Sunderland, our guests all the way from Australia, and the illustrious hosts of some amazing podcasts like Solve This Murder and Escape This Podcast. And so we are really, really grateful to have you guys as guests tonight. It's marvelous talking to you.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Like, we don't have like a huge amount of like, oh, here's a speech for you prepared. We've got some stuff that we feel like we can talk about, but if at any point people feel like you have questions or want to,
Make it open discussion
yeah,
point. More than
it's
welcome.
not like this. It's not like a giant audience where we won't be able to hear you. So feel free we can make it a discussion. But as a bit of context, so yeah, we have a few different podcasts that we work on, as well as other writing and other media. So we started our main podcast is Escape This Podcast, where we design audio escape rooms that each have like a full narrative and set of characters and a story and puzzles and all this stuff. We have guests come on and try and play them, and we make the whole thing a listenable experience for an audience. We had a second show as well, which we still do now, which is Solve This Murder. Solve This Murder is taking a classic whodunit style, so the Agatha Christie style murder mystery, but adding in that interactive element so that one of us knows all of the actual true parts of the mystery, and the other has to take on the role of detective and try and solve it, which is very hard because in a whodunit, the detective always knows which questions to ask and what questions will push the narrative ahead, because the person deciding what questions they ask knows what the narrative is. It's much harder to keep the beats moving along and having an understandable set of characters and mystery when the person pushing the action forward doesn't know what the results of that will be. So it's an interesting kind of take on how to write a compelling murder mystery when you're kind of only writing half of it. And we've worked then in other media as well. So we've done some video game writing.
Yeah, for the last 2 years, been working on a video game called The Rise of the Golden Idol, which is a sequel to an incredibly popular indie game. We didn't work on the first one, but again, it is essentially murder mysteries as told through language and puzzles in a video game context this time.
And then you've written a few digital like browser-based mystery games for the Sydney Opera House.
Yeah, particularly during COVID when people wanted more digital content. The Sydney Opera House wanted some more interactive narrative puzzle activities to be done online. As far as writing background goes, this is your first thing. The last couple of years have been your first experience writing, right?
In terms of actual like writing experience, I'm less of I'm less of what you'll care about. Danny, you've been writing for a long time.
I'm one of the people who has been writing essentially forever, since I was in year 2, 7 years old, and was told, wait, I can just make stuff up. And that power just grabbed me from there. And it was very much not a given, but something in the background was a little bit of a given that writing was my thing, and that it would be strange if that wasn't where my future was going to end up. When I was in year 7, we went around, we had like class votes after reading The Giver on what profession everyone in the class would be, and mine was storyteller, which was very nice. But what it has shown, I assumed the entire time that I was writing for like the first 25 years of writing that you don't like my maths. Oh, the first 25 years of life was that novel writing was pretty much the only form of creative writing that existed. And the idea of branching out into other sorts of things, or that other things even existed in different forms of media, hadn't really occurred to me. But now we've ended up in largely podcast writing, video game writing, all sorts of things that require some pretty different skills, but can really work for different storytelling types. And so we thought that it would be a good idea if that was a thing that we talked about, the different media that exist in different ways that you can tell your story, rather than just necessarily like, I love novels and novel writing, everything like that, but there are so many different things to consider.
Yeah. So if there's any kind of angle to this that we can take, I think that's maybe like being able to write in different media in a different context, and then also like achieving some kind of success outside of like a traditional publishing space. Yeah, in terms of actual romance writing, I don't know. I've been reading some Georgette Heyer. It's been good fun.
I mean, as far as I'm aware, I don't know how much the self-publishing landscape has changed things in this regard, is that romance writing is one of the most successful traditional media.
Yeah, and I feel like a good culture of self-publishing and controlling your own work, which hey, I really like. I like being able to make stuff outside of a traditional publishing perspective, because once we think of the idea, once we write it, it can just go out, which is really lovely, and go straight to an audience, which is always a very nice feeling.
But yeah, I have online, like I lurk in a lot of online writing spaces, and it is a large case where people are striving to write novels, and it's very admirable. But one thing that you notice sometimes is how many people struggle with some of the parts that make a novel a novel. And even though they've got wonderful ideas and huge feelings to express in their work, sometimes I can't help but be left with the feeling of, maybe if you were doing this as a script, you'd be happier and you'd be able to get your message across better, or things of that nature. So sometimes what you want to get across can work better if you consider opening yourself up to different ways of telling the story. And there are variables to consider with that, and sometimes they're interesting to consider and they're fun to consider. So yeah, I just want to talk, what are some of the variables? What do you need to change if you decide to change media? What's the difference between writing for a novel and writing for all sorts of other things? Short stories, writing for films, writing for podcasts, writing for stage, comics, anything like that. And like, if other people have ideas, I don't know what you've tried writing. I don't know what different forms of media you've engaged in. So if anyone does want to make any comments on this, feel free, because we're going to get sick of our voices.
That's true. Yeah, if any of you
have. We're American. We'll never get sick of your voices because you have an accent. And we just find that fascinating. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that because we had a script writer last month.
Oh yeah.
I've been pushing to have us see different media as options. We've talked about fan fiction, we've talked about screenwriting, game writing, all that different kind of stuff, because I want everybody to consider their options, because you're right, everybody always thinks like novel writing, and we're so stuck within novel, and then it's self and indie and trad publishing, or it's short stories and anthologies, trying to get into magazines. But there are so many options, and I realize like murder mystery thriller might be a little odd to add into, for a romance focus like we are. But the fact of the matter is that all stories are driven by relationships, whatever that relationship is. And so it doesn't matter kind of, I guess, what your overall genre is, because what you're doing is you're telling the relationships.
I'm
And
sure that we could make a good thesis of getting a romance relationship story right and getting things to a point where they feel like everything clicks and they make sense and you want this relationship to succeed. There can be some sort of relationship between that and writing a murder mystery where all of the clues fit into place and you feel satisfied by that one person at the end. Because really, in both of them, you're searching for the one, aren't you?
It's true. It is interesting from actually from the idea of like everything's about relationship. We're actually giving a talk at a convention in about in a couple of weeks, specifically around the inescapable importance of character when designing any kind of narrative. We're talking in that context about escape room design specifically, but that fundamentally the first step that gives anything a feeling that a
Meaning
human
and
can connect to
justification.
is all about character. It's all you have to be sort of character focused in any element of design for it to matter to the people who engage with it, right? And a lot of escape rooms have an issue with this in terms of being able to make a compelling emotional stakes for the player. And the way to do that is to inject things with character. And to make settings more interesting, you have to understand that people create the environments they live in. So building character, understanding the difference between a bedroom and Terry's bedroom is very, very important and creates a space that feels real and livable. And murder mysteries as well is an interesting one. Usually for us, right? So we have an element of interactivity, which changes the concept of the timing of narrative beats, the timing of plot beats, the timing of like when things get discovered. So we're less able to rely on that from what would be a more traditional murder mystery sort of thing of like, and then they find this piece of evidence, and then they find this, and because of that, we do focus on what we have control of, which is the characters that they will interact with. So I know personally for me, when I have a murder mystery written out and ready to exist, I have a short section about the true facts of what actually happened. And then the majority of my written material is basically character dossiers. It's like, here is a person, here are, from a mystery perspective, the things they experienced and what they saw, but here are the facts about them. Here's how they feel specifically about all the other people within this mystery. And knowing that relationship they have to each of those people will affect, because I don't know what questions they'll be asked, will affect how they're going to respond to those questions, how that is going to come across to the person who's solving them. So if I've written one for Dani to solve. And I think those things are fundamentally important. And it's interesting to see how much of a compelling narrative emerges literally almost just from having like one central question and then fleshed out characters to exist in that space. Will create a dynamic with the person who's trying to solve it, who'll talk to them, build up a relationship with them, find out more about what they think about each other, find out more about secrets they have, how they've interacted with each other in the past. There's an interesting thing to murder mysteries, I think, compared to something like a romance, possibly, or just a lot of other stories. There's often a fundamentally static nature to the situation. There's not usually a lot of more events that are.
It's usually
pushing
focused
a
on
narrative
past
forward.
momentum than
Yeah.
future momentum.
It's like you are stopping it at a particular moment in time and you're gradually filling out context. So people in their relationships and how they've interacted and how they've talked and what they think about is a way of like creating fake momentum by reframing things that have already happened or things that you've already experienced and changing how they feel. And I think that capacity to like use people and an understanding of those people to change how you think about things you already know is like the murder mysteries form of pushing forward. And when we were designing for Golden Idol, the video game, that was literally static. It was literally a frozen image in time that was full of information that helped you recontextualize the things that you were looking at in that scene based on
Yeah, so the way that the Golden Idol games work is you are given an image of a scene and you can click on things to learn more detail about them. And without anything overtly telling you what has happened, you piece together that generally a murder has happened. And by squirreling away and looking at all of these details that you piece together, you can tell all of the standard things, like who did it and why, and what other confounding factors were going on in the scene to make it look the way that it did.
But yeah, it's the thing that's jumped into my head as well, and we'll just talk for a while. So feel free to always interrupt and say anything if you have a thought. I think one of the things that's really interesting in terms of like character and or like what the format that we have for our murder mysteries, right? As I say, like we have less control over when beats happen, when a thing feels good, and we always we do them episodically. We try and break up our investigation into X number of episodes, however many is reasonable for the length of the mystery. Sometimes we don't know what the length of the mystery will be, but what it means is we have to start getting a feel for what is a satisfying moment, right? A satisfying beat to end on, because we like to end with like oh my gosh, what's going to happen next.
This is definitely one of the things. There is a large component when you want to swap media that you need to consider, does this need changing? Because there are certain elements of, obviously the microstructure will need changing, like how much narration can you do, how much dialogue makes sense, those sorts of things you can obviously see, but also to the macro structure in terms of like how have your acts been separated, what story beats make sense. The beats that you get in a comic book are going to be wildly different from a novel, say, and the same definitely goes for podcasting.
But yeah, I think that interactive nature means that you have to sort of get a feeling for what feels like a nice moment, right? And you have to know that you've got a pile of them available. And we often find that one of the big things that we end episodes on is having an assumption about a person, getting prepared to go and talk to that person, and talking to them for a small amount of time until there's usually a moment early on where you have to rethink an assumption about who they are or what their opinion was or what they were doing. And we can often find at the start of a conversation, we go, there's going to be a key thing about this person that when you realize it is going to make you, as the person investigating the mystery, go, wait, what? You're their sister? Right? Like, sorry, you've never been to Utah? Oh my God, right? These weird little moments that hit. And so you start to get a feel for, that is interesting, right? It's emotionally engaging. It locks people in. And so we'll often find ourselves ending episodes with these moments.
Particularly good for something episodic like a podcast, because if people are going to be waiting a week, ideally you want them to have something to think about for a week.
And again, it's that
not have an answer, but have a question.
Yeah, as soon as you give additional context to how a person is, that gives then people we know that they will enjoy a week of, but if that's true, let me rethink everything. And I think that's a nice general feeling, I think, for storytelling. It's like, yeah, to leave them wanting more. And I think it's also it's give them something to think about, give them something that is like, I should rethink of everything in the new context that I have. And changing context, I think,
it sounds a little bit like it could be identical to just end every chapter with a cliffhanger. And look, cliffhangers have their place. I love them, but there is, just to know, not saying one is better than the other, but there is a difference between leaving audiences for a week on what's going to happen next and can I think more throughout this week about what has happened.
Yeah, the difference between what's happening next or wait, I need to rethink about what's already happened is a fun difference. And I like that. I like a recontextual, and I think that works in lots of stories, right? Like
it does, but for example, in a movie, you can't have that going for too long because people typically watch a movie in one short burst. So you're not going to have that contemplative time until perhaps afterwards, if they're the sort of person who thinks hard about a movie after watching it. Not everyone does, and not every movie makes you want to. And for a book, it's interesting because you can have cliffhanger endings to books while waiting for a sequel, which is a torture that I'm sure we all know, because that's not a week. That's not a week that you're waiting before the next one.
Some writers you can't trust. It'll be 15 years.
And then there are some where you can end a chapter with a cliffhanger, but under most circumstances, if that cliffhanger or mystery is enticing enough, you're just going to turn the page and keep going. So
Mm.
it requires the reader to use their own initiative to stop for a moment, which can be fun. I've definitely done that, but the sort of in the podcasting manner has an interesting nature in that it can invite it and force it a little bit more at the same time.
I'm also just thinking literally about the last romance novel I read, which was The Unknown Ajax by Georgette Heyer, which is great, which is lovely. But it had that similar quality of having a sort of a central mystery around sort of who these people were and their character motivations. I think Georgette Heyer is very good at writing characters that have interesting motivations and interesting differences. But it also had that same quality of you would find out some new element of a person's character or a thing about them. And it would make you think back to all the interactions you've seen between those characters to that point and have to recontextualize them in your mind. And it became a very interesting, like, oh, if that was a lie, then these 3 times they said it, why were they saying it then? Or what's, oh, that's interesting. It means that actually they were trying to be quite guarded then and they've let their guard on, like, oh, this person, oh, his son died in the war. All right, okay, let's go back to all this thing about his interactions with his grandson in that new context. And has that same thing of setting up situations and allowing you to learn more, to recontextualize and have those same moments of when there is a reveal. It's not just, oh, wow, crazy new fact. It's, oh, this has like I'm going back and thinking about things I've already read.
So essentially what I feel like we're concluding is make sure you give your characters really good reasons to be lying about stuff.
But I mean, reasons are, but it's also just reasons to be doing anything, right? Like as long as your characters, like the more the characters in a story are making decisions based on who they are rather than someone needs to do a thing here, let's give it to John for some reason. Like he can be the one who says this, right? Which is like having a plot first and then trying to get characters to do the stuff that you wanted to happen in the plot. The more they are doing things because of who they are, the more learning about who they are is important to understanding the story, and the more there is like depth to that, which I think is valuable. I think it's helpful and it gets people invested.
It is interesting because would you describe yourself as more character first when you?
No, not at all. But I think if I need something to happen in a murder mystery, because obviously we need a murder, right? There's got to be a murder mystery. There's some key elements. In the same way that in a romance novel you probably need some romance in there, a murder mystery you'd probably need a murder and some mystery.
So it sounds like what you're saying is there a plot beat. If there is a plot beat that you want to happen, but then your characters are already established enough that if you couldn't figure out how to make any of them do that, you'd say that can't happen.
I would either say that can't happen, which I've done a lot and had to scrap things and said, no, this doesn't, given the people that in this scene, this wouldn't happen, I've got to change it up. Or if it's early enough, I go, I do want that to happen, which means I need to redesign one of these people.
Well, yeah, that's sort of what I would be saying. I tend to be very plot first, and maybe there'll be some characters that I have a very clear image of that I want to keep. But in general, there will be some flexibility there, and I will want the story to happen, and the characters will mold themselves around making that make sense rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
But I think that's a personal choice.
Yeah, I think there's also a time that is relevant, because, like, for example, I don't think a character has changed midway through me trying to solve a mystery.
No, that's
right?
true.
There's a certain point where it's like, again, that's part of the static nature of a murder mystery, where the things that happen to the actions, you might be altering your characters to make those actions more reasonable. But now, once we're locked in and it's post and it's the investigation moment and I'm coming in to talk to your characters, you're not going to say, I want them to give this type of clue, I better change the character. But no, they are who they are. You got to try and ask them right. You got to try and talk to the right person. You got to, like, at this point, the people are locked in, and the stuff that you're going to discover, you'll have to discover based on you changing. I don't think a person would change at that point.
That is definitely a funny part about the different media. When you have your facts locked in, and when you are ceding control over things to the audience or the player in the case of a video game. So yeah, in podcasting, the way that we often do it, it's a little bit weird because it does feel like we still have control over our narrative, even as it is being produced and as it is being put out there. But for things that are more traditionally published or just more traditionally created, you don't get any sort of malleability whatsoever in how the audience or how the people trying to solve your mysteries are going to go about it. More so with video games. We've already talked about how structure has to be very different because you never know what people are going to click on in what order. You never know what's going to grab their attention. And you are 100% hands off. And it's quite terrifying, honestly, compared to what we're used to.
Yeah, we like for escape room stuff that we do, if someone's completely misinterpreting something, we always have the capacity, well, because we are there in the space, to be like, yeah, maybe reinterpret that, please. But when it's completely out of your hands, so we had that a lot for video game testing, that you would put in these interesting moments that you thought would imply a certain type of relationship between two people, or they'd imply a certain fact or a certain association between objects, and people look at them and they go either, well, that's nothing, or this is incredibly important. This completely unconnected thing must be connected to this completely unconnected thing. And you're not there to do anything. You're like, well, I got to fix it. I got to change how people are interpreting this.
At least when it comes to normal writing, if you're sending it off to readers, like beta readers and things, even if they have misinterpreted something, they've misunderstood something, or it just hasn't clicked, they can still finish. And that's
yes, puzzles have that added thing of like, if you misinterpret a piece of art, often it is just like, oh well, I guess
that's
you
the
didn't
end
get
of
it.
the art.
They're sitting there being like, yeah, it's clearly these two people were secretly in love the whole time. You're like, I don't think they were, but that's fine. You got to the end of the book. Whereas for ours, if people go, see, these two people are secretly in love, they'll never finish because they're trying to solve everything. And then this person didn't kill this person because they were in love. Like, that's not right. You're never going to get to the end of the scene. You have to get it right.
That's what fanfic's for.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, it's.
I have not gone to search for Golden Idol fan fiction.
Oh, I've seen some
never
Golden
have.
Idol fan art,
Aw.
which is always very fun.
I very much spent my teenage years heavily into fanfic, so I'm very happy with that.
But yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, I think that one of the biggest things for us that affects the manner in which we need to write stories, have to write stories, is like, obviously there's a gamified nature to pretty much everything that we make as our main sort of jobs. And also, yeah, specifically there's that interactivity, right? There's always someone who's part of telling the story who is influencing what happens in it. And it's interesting because it changes stuff that you can be focused on, right? Like there's a different amount of like caring about someone's emotional investment, where in a normal story you want to care about things being emotionally involved for the reader so they will continue reading. But or you can assure yourself that all the characters are emotionally involved because you wrote them, and you could just be like, this character is emotionally involved, and then they will do the things that you want. When there's a little bit more interactivity, you often are ceding action over to someone, so you need them to be actually properly involved in the scene and caring and trusting that they can do stuff because otherwise it won't happen. It will stop because there will be a fundamentally like missing impetus from the story that you don't have as much control over. So you care a lot about making sure people care, and I think, Danny, you're very good at this in ways that for other people would seem mundane. I think there's a common pitfall in interactive media where people think if you set the stakes high enough, people will have to care, right? They'll be, oh, the world's going to end if you don't do this. Oh, a million babies will die. You better save them, right? And they think these high stakes are sort of catch-all ways to get people involved. Kind of, so I think sometimes forgetting that those people are fake because you just made them up. So that doesn't actually, people aren't going to be that invested. Like, the world's going to end. It's like, oh, I know it's not. So that's fine. It's like, and I think, Danny, you're quite good in escape room design, especially, of setting stakes that are fundamentally low, but get people much more emotional. There's a lot of like, this escape room is set in a real estate office. Your friend lost their job. Can you help them get it back? Or, maybe they deserve to lose it, or go find out. But if you care about the character that's introduced as a friend, or if you hate the characters that are introduced as annoying real estate people, that becomes far more a high stakes situation than this person's about to blow up the world.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, exactly. Relatable, low stakes get people involved.
And I think romance is a particularly good one, and that because most of the time, and like any individual characters falling in love is fundamentally on a worldwide scale not high stakes in itself. It happens every day. And yet, by pushing as much character and as much of the individuals as possible, being able to manipulate in the best possible way the readers into wanting nothing more than to seeing a relationship succeed or fail, depending on what you're doing with it. It's amazing. It takes real skill, and it's really exciting to be able to do that. And every form of media can come with different emotions that you are trying to play on in that way. Escape rooms, a really big one. I really enjoy it because it comes with, you want your players, you want the people engaging with that medium to feel good about themselves. And that's really nice when you can just create a puzzle, and if they solve that puzzle, they feel good about themselves and you. Everybody wins. It's amazing. But yeah, that is playing on people feeling accomplished and like they have done something, which is a little bit different to the feelings that you're trying to evoke when someone is reading. They're not quite the same thing. Again, just something to consider with different forms of media.
Participation versus like voyeurism is interesting because it also changes certain things that you can do in certain ways. Like one of the ones that we talk about a lot, something that is very common in a lot of media, but much harder in any kind of interactive media, is the sort of it's not dramatic irony, but like the hero did everything right, and then this bad thing just happened. They were doing fine, suddenly twist of fate, things went bad. Oh, a bad thing happened to them. And it's easier to read that and be like, oh no, they did everything good. Oh, they're so good. And then suddenly this bad thing happened. Oh, this is tragic. How are they going to deal with it? But in a playing situation, it is, sorry, I made the right choice and I did it correct, and now you're punishing me? How dare you, right? Like it becomes a deliberate takeaway from their success and their actions, which is far more like irritating if it's interactive. If you do it right and then you lose anyway, that is a moment usually not of tragic irony and, oh, I can't believe this, oh, how sad. It is, well, screw you. How dare you? I did it right. Now you're telling me I did it wrong. I was feeling good about,
It's a good point. Betraying your audience takes very different forms across different media.
And so you have to kind of change the impact. Like things are much better if you can go, hey, you did this thing, but you made a choice that meant you deliberately didn't do this thing, and that's the thing that's going to go poorly. And then you can feel like, I've made my choice, and I'm living I'm living in my own world. Or like, you did it, you're good, everything went right, and some other character had a thing go wrong. And like you can change these things to create drama in ways that have to be different for the audience that you're working with. And interactivity changes a lot of the beats that you can hit and a lot of the story elements that you can use. Stakes is also an interesting one for murder mysteries or whodunits specifically, because like you always have a built-in stake of like, a person is dead and you should investigate this, right? But there's a tonal thing that's always tough to deal with, right? Where it's like, this person is dead and you want to solve their murder, but if they're really, really nice, this is just a bummer. Like, it's just sad that this perfectly lovely person has been killed. And maybe that's not like, it's a whodunit, right? Like, it's not like a crime story. It's not like a really intense drama. It's got to be a bit playful, even though someone's dead. So the person who's dead you have to have a little bit in you that's like, yeah, but come on, it's fine that, like, if someone's going to die, it's not so bad that it was them. But then also not then finish by going, oh, well, what are you in the court of the murderer? Shake their hand. The guy you killed was terrible. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. If they're the worst, you go too far. Exactly. Yeah. It's if they are really bad, then you get to the end. It's like, well, what's going to happen to the murderer? And you're like, I get them away. Let's run away together. But this person sucks.
Sad. I'd be lying if I haven't read a good handful of murder mysteries where that's absolutely the conclusion.
That's also true. I feel like some of the big famous ones, like some of the absolute like top examples of the genre, will have that as the solution. It's like in the end, everyone goes, "Let's all just pretend none of this ever happened. Maybe everything's fine." But so that's always an interesting balance, and we've had that occasionally. I've had moments in a murder mystery that I've been running where I've like described the moment to you or had the scene, and you sort of been like, "Oh, this is just, oh no, poor guy."
Is it that we cheer for the most horrible, iconic villains and monsters? I feel in two separate ways. One, when I am cheering for villains, I'm cheering for competence. I enjoy it when people aren't morons. And a lot of people say, "Oh, why do I love this villain?" And a lot of people miss that. And it's just they were being smart. And it turns out smart is sexy.
Yeah, that's very common.
But yeah, the other thing is a lot of what I would say I get out of passive media, the things that I'm just absorbing and not taking part in, for me, it's definitely escapism, but escape from the, I don't know how to call it, like the medium level of emotionality and connection that could happen in the real world and in fiction. The ability for, if the author can create this in me, heightened, and everything goes up to 100%. And if that can be my sense of moral outrage and justice or terror, fantastic. Then I am absolutely 1000% absorbed. I want things to be heightened. And it's not that they're, exaggerated. It's just you have managed to tweak my emotions to well beyond their baseline using your skills.
You know what I think is also an interesting element of that, of the like the competence villain that you root for sort of thing in murder mysteries? I think it's possibly a fundamental reason why they often give themselves away in the denouement, in like the moment of, but maybe it was you, Mr. Higglebottom. Of course I killed him. Because that's fundamentally an inept thing to do. The more that they are cold and calculating, they never give in right to the end, the more often as a reader, you kind of want them to get away with it a little bit, right? Because they're kind of cool and they're kind of, they're very competent, and it's this battle between two great things. And I think giving them a bit of a bumbling moment at the end when they admit that they did it is a way of undercutting not the solving of the mystery, which was done perfectly, but it kind of can sometimes undercut an audience's support for them getting away with it, right? Because they did, they screwed it up. Now they kind of deserve it.
It lets you get to a comfortable shift of, okay, now I'm a bit off their side and on the smart detective side.
Yeah, now the detective is the smart one who really knew, and they gave it away. They made some, and you will often find in a murder mystery, they will make some fundamental error that gives them away, making them effectively a failure in a certain way, and ridding yourself of that human impulse to be like, they're just too cool. They're just too good. I want them. I don't care that they killed all those babies, that million babies I didn't save earlier in that whole story. And it leads to, it gives them, it takes away an allure for them, right? And I think sometimes that is important precisely for that feeling of, do people want them to get caught? And a good way to make you want them to get caught is to give them a bit of a bumble. And then they're like, and you're like, great, now I kind of want them to get caught. Now I'm fine with all this. I took away that last little bit of me that was like, I know they should go to prison, but do I want them to? Although actually, so many whodunits do end with, and then they hanged him. You're like, oh my God, all right. This just went straight to it. Okay, cool. Poirot sitting in the corner. Well, at least he got the rope. You're like, oh my God, Poirot. But it is right. But I think that's a key. That is an interesting. But it's important, right? When you're making art, when you're making media, that you understand those elements of a human's kind of emotional connection to stuff. That people do like competence, or people do like these, or what can turn people off. And I think that's maybe a classically used thing for an understanding of people's motivations when reading, and that's a good thing to do. If you don't know what makes someone lovable, it's hard to write a satisfying romance where you want them to end up together. Otherwise, you just end up with the final season of Jane the Virgin. I've decided to get mad at right now. She was with the wrong man.
That is definitely something to be tricky about when it comes to romance, because, well, in the real world, everyone is experiencing romance a lot more than they're experiencing murder mysteries. So people have very different ideas of what is acceptable, what is lovable, what is a horrible, horrible deal breaker. And well, often how the best thing that romance novels can do in the ones that I enjoy to get around that is by putting them in wild settings. That's why romantasy is so incredibly popular, because putting things into heightened or unusual situations means the normal real world levels of acceptable things can be shifted slightly, but everybody is going to still maintain their different ideas of, oh no, that was an immediate turn off for me. I can no longer see this character in the same light. And that's a very tricky thing to balance. And it requires a great level of control to make sure that where you hope the characters will end up happily, the readers will also end up happily and feel like, yes, this was the one true solution.
And there are some ways that you absolutely can't control for that, and I think shouldn't, right? I think I think for a lot of people, right, if you're making a piece of art, the more you're trying to be like, I've got to make sure that every person will experience this in the same way, starts to just detract from it, right? You know, there's always going to be someone out there who's reading like a romance novel, and the person at some point implies that they don't go to church every Sunday, and then they're just like, they're out. You could never be a romantic prospect. And then when they end up together, they'll be like, they married the heathen. Like, you can't control for that, right? Or other way around, you might try and set something up as a character flaw, and people who think that flaw is a benefit will look at it and be like, well, they're a great person. You know, of course they did this heinous thing. I do that all the time, and I'm not a bad person. And so you kind of can't always match that, right? Murder mysteries as well, you can't always match, like, maybe sometimes people will just be like, nope, that person deserves to be punished for this thing, and some people are like, nope, they're perfectly fine. We recently, I won't say what, but we were just both engaging in a piece of media, a long form piece of media that we got to the end of, and then clearly went, there is a fundamental, like, philosophical difference in how our brain works compared to how the makers of this thing works, where we feel like we got to the end of this thing and they went, and here's how the ending plays out. Isn't that bad? And
yeah, they were giving us what was a grim, sad ending, and we went, no,
wrong. That's
this
the better
was
version.
The only good moral just ending.
You've incorrectly interpreted the ending of your piece of work. I'm so sorry. And it's just because there's clearly like a concern of a thing that they went, let's put this to the side and focus on this, and we went, I can't put that to the side, let's focus on that, please. And we had a different, like, honestly, it felt like a different philosophical framework for the meaning of existence that led to a different interpretation of how the thing ended. And it was going to be hard for them to win us over, because we were dealing with a piece of the art that I believe they didn't really even consider that people would grapple with. And so they weren't thinking about how to do it, which is perfectly fine. That's like the difference in them making a thing and art. It's better than it
being able to find meanings that the author didn't intend it's a really cool part about this entire
And I think the whole time we were sitting there getting mad at it, but also thinking fundamentally it's better that they did a thing that could make us mad rather than trying to get some plain middle ground that didn't have anything to say so that we could never get mad at it.
That's true.
Like, it's good that they had a point that they were trying to make. Wild that they made that point, but hey, that's just up to me. But yeah, so I think you're always going to lose someone on something.
On the other hand, depending on, again, we're going into different media, so I feel like it's stop interpreting the verse. I feel like one thing that makes me feel a little grubby to talk about, but it's definitely can be an important thing, and it's a form of media in itself. Engagement bait. Things that are there to deliberately cause division. Like, for instance, let's go old school rather than going to new form rage bait. Like, when Stephanie Meyer wrote the Twilight series, the whole Team Jacob versus Team Edward thing was possibly like the biggest part of like what made it a viral phenomenon. People having split feelings and being able to fight. You could argue, if people felt in such different divisive ways, maybe that means that she didn't write the relationship as clearly the correct one well enough. But is she a huge, massive success because people had really divisive, strong feelings about it? You could argue that as well. So yeah, sometimes knowing who your audience is and how your audience is going to engage and modern media landscapes, sometimes you can consider the fact that the different, like, it's not just controlling one single message can work in your favor.
Yeah.
It's a bit scary to let it out of your control in that way, I find it, but I definitely like keeping things controlled.
Yeah, and you know, there's a whole separate argument for the various values that people have when making media, right? Whether you're making it for the story you want to tell, or whether you tell a story that you think will be successful, so that you can be like that's an argument in and of itself as to what motivations you should have or could have or don't clash or do clash. So you know, that's a separate argument. I don't think we pivot in the last 10 minutes to here's how you should write, don't, and here are all your motivations. Oh, what? You put that character because you thought it'd be more relatable? That's just money grubbing. Like, that's nothing. Yeah, I suppose, I do think, are we doing, is this an hour that we've blocked out for this? Is that my understanding?
More or less.
Right.
Oh, perfect.
Well, we've got 10 minutes. Did anyone have any specific questions or discussion?
I would
stuff
love
you
to
wanna
hear
talk
about other people's experiences.
Just tell us about what you're doing.
So I do have a question.
Yeah.
If that's all right. If
No,
nobody
not you.
has
Sorry,
anything-
anyone other than you.
I accept
You're not
that.
allowed.
Yeah.
No,
right.
please, go ahead.
Come on, you've been laughing at my jokes in the chat. So my big question is red herrings and placing them along, and can you have too many? Can you have too few? At what point does your audience, your players, just go, I have no idea, and rage quit?
It again super strongly depends on the media. When it comes to escape rooms, we have found, and probably a bit murder mysteries as well, but more escape rooms, you don't need to do anything even faintly red herringy. People will create their own red herrings out of absolutely nothing. And
I think there's also a difference.
I have done that.
Yep.
Yeah, huge. I think there's also a difference
all the time
between like red herrings, which I think when I think of a red herring, it's like a deliberately false clue. I think can often negatively impact the trust that you have built up with the audience and with their ability to trust new information. And I think what you can think of instead of red herrings are like possible alternative interpretations or possible alternative facts or something that's happening that isn't relevant, but it itself should be fully formed and fully understandable and fully solvable, right? So you should have like false paths that people will realize and understand are false, but they're not like fake. They're just like, oh, that was a different thing that was happening. But anytime you try and put in like, and this will be a trick to make them think this, and then it'll turn out it's not, you start to kind of abuse the relationship, where then they'll get legitimate information later and they'll go, well, I'm not going to engage with this. Could just be a trick. I'll just wait till you tell me what's real. I'm just going to read to the end. I'm whatever. We'll just see what happens, because last time you gave me what seemed like a real clue, it turned out to be just a haha idiot. I can't believe you thought that was a real clue. So you want things to be legitimate. Like, I think you need complexity in design, or like, especially in like a mystery design, you need complexity. But if you think about red herrings, like this is a fake clue or this is a lead you down the wrong path, that's not an enjoyable experience. It becomes almost antagonistic with the people engaging with it.
I think that my goal is, in all of the forms of media, try not to let your reader at the end, or your audience member at the end, have a question of, oh, whatever happened with the...
Yes. Yeah, right.
Like,
and then there's that was just a red herring.
Thing wasn't given a 100% finite ending, but you can still see where things were going or where it came from. It doesn't need to be, here is a dot point list of every single thing that was mentioned in the story. Like, sometimes they will have made enough sense, but no 100% question marks of, oh yeah, that was brought up and went away and didn't seem to have anything.
I think it's another case of, right, a red herring, to me, which is often just a bad version of something. Like the red herring is, oh, and that bit, I understand. The author put that in because it was going to mislead me. That's not what you want people to think. You want to, again, have everything be a character-based decision. So then when there's something that acts as a red herring, at the end, instead of thinking, oh, the author put that in to confuse me, they think, oh, John Carmichael did that because he was obsessed with dogs the whole time. Oh, I understand. That's why that whole thing was happening. Because John the dog guy was getting involved. That's why there was all that dog hair around. And so if you end up with it as like a, oh, I understand this in the context of the people in the story, that will never feel like a red herring. It feels like oh, that's what I got confused on. It was a thing that. But if they as the reader is looking at it like, oh, that was like a red herring. The author put that in to confuse me. You don't really want
there
that.
doesn't need to be like a piece of red string connecting an object to the central mystery and the central solution to the mystery, but there has to be a piece of red string connecting it to something or someone.
Yeah. And that makes them feel better, I think.
So basically everybody, all characters have an outside life of your central story, and sometimes it has something to do with why they're all together, but does not necessarily solve the mystery.
Yeah, and
exactly.
Again, there's always a level of skill in being able to balance these things.
Yeah,
I've definitely had trouble in the past with going with the okay, let's make all of my characters fully formed humans with their own fully formed lives, and then they're just boring people who don't interact with each other. And so you say, okay, come on, you got to work a little bit harder. You got to shift
That's
it
a little too
bit
close to reality.
Exactly. I'm not a fan of that. Some people are absolutely big fans of fiction that mirrors reality perfectly. It's not my strength. It's not where I get my enthusiasm.
They should be fully formed characters, but you get to form them, so you should form them for a particular purpose.
I learned to roller skate recently. I had no skill whatsoever at the start. And the biggest thing, it took me about 8 weeks to figure this out, was that I controlled the skates more than they controlled me. It wasn't that, oh, the skates are moving in this way and I have to learn what they're going to do. It was, no, if I just pull my foot this way, it will move this way. And it turned out that's how you learn to skate. And it can be the same with riding.
Is this a question?
Yeah. Does having a player ever give you surprise interaction between your written characters? Oh, that's interesting.
Recently, in a murder mystery that I wrote and ran for you took one of my. Usually, when we're doing a murder mystery, we think of characters as, for me, almost being like a set piece that interacts with the player for a while, and then they'll do another different character. You had an interaction with one character. Then you set them up to help you do a sting on another character, which led to them interacting, finding each other, and me needing in the moment to be like, well, how I have to play both of these characters talking to each other, where one of them has realized that one of them is working with the person who's trying to put a sting on that. So it does happen occasionally.
Now, that worked because Bill is very good at improvising. I am not, so I probably wouldn't let that happen for fear that it would unravel everything. But if you are open to that sort of thing, then it can happen.
Yeah, and again, it depends again on the agency of the player. Often they're not set up this way, because it's somewhat slightly feels self-obsessed to be like, and then 3 of my characters will talk to each other for a while. You sit there and listen. While there's a player there, but
that's also a different media thing. Like when you're writing a book, you can have all of your characters talking in one big conversation. When you're doing a podcast and you are the only one with the information, are you going to put on 4 different voices for these characters? Does each person need their own accent? Do you need to do voice manipulation, or are people just going to get bored of hearing you talking to yourself?
And when there is a person whose interaction is meant to push the scene, the more you take that away from them, the less you're fundamentally fulfilling the central premise of the thing that you're making. So yeah, it's harder to do it, like just by your own means. But yeah, a player can sometimes interactively be like, no, I'm taking 2 of your pieces and I'm going to smash them together. I'm going to tell you me what happens when I do. You're like, all right, well, let me tell you what happens.
Have you ever been in an escape room? Oh, a big thing in escape rooms when you're in a physical escape room is you will often hear like a voice over a speaker who is sort of in character and telling you about your mission or what's going on and what you should be doing next. I'm struggling to think of rooms where you hear that, but you have 2 or more NPCs talking to each other and not you.
And often if it does, you start to zone out. It's like, I want to be involved in this.
Yeah, so yeah, there are some situations where it probably shouldn't happen at all.
But yeah,
That's interesting.
it isn't a difference. But yeah, it can happen if you have a very proactive player who wants to make that happen. And it has happened to us occasionally. And sometimes you get new information. When you watch them talk to each other, you go, oh, interesting that they're doing that. Let me put that in my pocket for later.
I think this is another great place, like if you have a traditional piece of writing and you put it out there, this is what fan fiction is great for. They get to build those interactions between the other characters that you didn't intend, you didn't think of, and when they're not on the page, like that's okay. There's space in the background that you can play in, and it's fun.
How's that affected when using IPs versus an original world?
Again, because I came from a fan fiction background, I love existing IPs and trying to figure out what clicks and what it always comes from the characters. And that's why so much fanfic is romance based, is because you are trying to dig down into what is the essence of this character and what makes it make sense with one of the other characters. And you can put them into alternate universes. You can put them into completely different situations from the original setting, and as long as the characters stay true to themselves, or what the audience feels is true to themselves, then it's all okay and it all still clicks and makes sense. And I really enjoy that part of it.
I think a really interesting kind of element of this happened when we were doing work for Rise of the Golden Idol. Because it was someone else's IP. So there's certain things that you can't do, but usually there's a person there that you can be like, hey, I want to do something with this. And they'll say, yeah. But more importantly, we would be broken into writing teams for each individual scenario. And often you'd have characters that exist and introduced in one scene.
So like we would invent a character, but then
someone else
show up in
using
someone else's later.
And there would be a really good, and I think this was a good sign for the health of the characters as people. And the structure of the story is that often we would need to be in contact to be like, look, in my scene, just to get a bit of like mystery information across, I've had this person have an argument with this person, and they'd be like, oh, okay, so we now kind of understand that these two characters don't like each other, they're a bit argumentative, that's going to affect how I place them in this scene. Oh, that's really good. And then they say, oh, well, actually in this one they've got like a hidden thing. Also, they need to be a bit sneakier. I have them being really open with information in this scene. Let me change that. I'm going to move that information. You know what? Let's make it a motif. I'm going to give them a little hidden thing there. And they're like, but now from a puzzle perspective, don't. I was like, oh, well, then I'll just make them more secretive and I'll hit something here. Maybe they're talking to themselves as opposed to talking to another person. And so you see how like we're using them in a utilitarian way to get puzzle solutions across, but caring about the fact that that changes how they're presented from a character perspective. So we're needing to keep that consistent and effective, because people will notice it. They'll be like, why is this person, were they enemies 2 scenes ago? Why are they chatting? What have I missed? And they might build up a crazy backstory about how but maybe we didn't want that. So we need to so we manipulate the characters to keep matching their function, but making sure they remain characters. So there are certain points when the function doesn't affect the character, so we need to have the character affect the function in later scenes. Like, I needed them to be argumentative here, so later on make sure they are argumentative, and maybe that'll affect how you put them in the scene.
I also kind of really love it in working with existing IP, because those things I very much enjoy the restriction breeds creativity rather than blank page and all options available to you, which creates brain panic for me. So I definitely like playing an IP and seeing what that does to what it allows you to do and come up with in terms of plot and character interactions and what makes sense and what is feasible.
All right. Is there any other last little questions, or should we? I think we're now.
Oh yeah, we don't want to keep you.
But if anyone else has any things they want to ask or mention, or just don't even have to ask us, you can just say something cool if you have something cool to say.
How do you guys normally pick the type of puzzles and things that you do for your stories and such?
Oof. Dead last. I come up with what seems like a fun setting, and then I come up with what the story is around it, and come up with what often, like when it comes to escape rooms or any other sort of puzzles, I come up with the final achievement moment that I want them to get before I have come up with anything that they actually have to solve. So I know where I want them to end up, and I know what feeling they want them to end up. And that leads you to be able to place obstacles in the way of that. And from there, come up with exactly what the puzzles are. And from there, there's a lot of practical stuff. Like there are certain objects that have to be around that it would be ridiculous if they weren't there. What sort of puzzle and what sort of challenge type makes sense with that thing? And I suppose you can absolutely write a lot of stories in that way. You can say, what do I want the ending to be? What do I want the ending feeling to be? And why is it not there at the start?
Yeah. Yeah, like because that's what like one of the classic, like if it's set in a bed, if you ended up with a setting that ends up being a bedroom, you have to do something with the bed. You can't be like, well, there's no bed in this one because I couldn't think of a bed-based puzzle. Like, it's a bedroom. There's a bed in there. You have to do something with it. Yeah, I think I will also feel like murder mystery stuff. The two versions are either come up with like a central sort of like theme for it, like great, or like a location which can influence. Like I've had one just like it's on a plane. Let's start with that. Let's put it as if someone dies while on a international flight or a national flight on a plane, and then build a mystery. Whereas others have felt like, oh, I want this kind of a moment. Like I had one that was just like, it wasn't so much like it's set in a theater. Let's see what happens. It was, I want someone who thinks they're being shot with a prop gun to be shot by a real gun, but the bit will be it wasn't this prop gun on stage. That was a prop gun. There'll be someone else in the audience with the real gun. That's what I want. Like I think that's a fun moment of discovery. Like the moment of being like, oh, the prop gun was real, and then checking it, being like, no, that is a prop gun, but there was definitely a real gun because someone's dead. Where's the real gun? That's what I wanted as a moment, and built the entire mystery around that feeling of going, wait a minute, what?
Exactly. You have found the heightened emotional moment that you want everyone to be able to feel. That's definitely the most important part of why I love fiction.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, especially that, I like knowing the question that people are going to ask and undercutting what they expect to be asked. Like you see someone get shot when a prop gun fires, and the question that you ask is, okay, well, who swapped out the prop gun? And then the surprise of the question needing to be, wait a minute, where was the other gun? Because it wasn't on stage is like almost like an undercutting of the expectation of what they don't know. It's like, well, I know what I don't know. No, you don't. You do know that. There's some new thing that you don't know. Wonderful. All right, I think we're probably done. I hope that was at least interesting, if not helpful. So,
quite frankly, like anything that comes out, it's not, oh, here's how you should write. It's, I hope that talking about it has made you feel about the fun of it and just the fun of different creation.
No. This is our system. Buy our book. It's the only way to write. If you follow our 10 steps, you will be a millionaire by the end of the decade.
But yeah, try different media. It can be fun. It can have different challenges, and different rewards can come out of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And do you guys have a book? I want to read it.
Sorry.
If you did, I would read it. But in the meantime, everybody go and listen
random
to
interviews.
the podcast.
Go and check. If you're intrigued, if you want to see whether or not anything we said had value because we make terrible art, you can go and check out Solve This Murder if you want to see the murder mystery side of what we do, or Escape This Podcast if you want to see the escape room side.
Quite frankly, we have written stuff that finished before, and that's you all know that's an achievement.
Yeah,
we did something right.
The project.
There you go.
So yeah,
if anyone doesn't understand quite how this works, it's a narrative style, kind of like an RPG where you're sitting there, you're listening as they or participating as their people are asking questions and examining things and looking around, and you just don't have. I mean, you playing as class detective, I guess. But very entertaining. Very excellent work, you guys. I'm hugely glad that my husband recommended I listened to your podcast because, and then he went, hey, you know what you should get as presenters, and so we're really glad you guys could be here, Dani and Bill. We
We
appreciate it.
can
Thank
talk
you.
for a long time.
Yeah, it's not. You sort of prod us with a stick once, and we'll go for an hour.
I appreciate that probably more than anything else. Uh,
Thank you so much for having
Yeah,
us.
it was lovely. It was good to be here and be able to chat for a little bit.
gladness. All right,
It
well,
does the same for me. Like, I'm gonna go and I'm going to open a notebook and write because it's just made me happy talking about it.
there we go. Hey, that's what we're here
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
We have critiques the second Tuesday of every month at 7 p.m. On Zoom, and we've got presentations at the last Thursday of every month. We're here for it. Happy to help anyone who needs it. Don't forget, everybody, we've got Quill's Writing Conference coming up, not this weekend, but the following weekend. It's going to be amazing. I've procured a lot of really kick butt stuff for the silent auction fundraiser, as that is my other job in the
Wow.
league. And so everybody show up. There are virtual tickets and in-person tickets still available. And so we'll give a round of applause for our presenters. Love it.
No, and
Thanks,
thank you.
guys,
Good,
for being
good
here.
on all of you.
And have a wonderful evening and morning.
Lovely. Well, it's
I guess
pretty
it's
much
afternoon.
the afternoon at this point, but that's all right. That's our morning.
Thank you so
Excellent.
much.
All right.
All right. Have a great night.
Bye,
Or-
everybody.
yeah, bye.
you.